Hello everyone, and this is my review for TNA Impact Wrestling on January 23rd, 2015. And, I'll actually start off this one with the whole Feast or Fire match and the subsequent revealing of the briefcases after on the same show, which is actually very weird considering most of the times they do the Feast or Fired concept, they put you in tension for like a week or 2 weeks even in some cases. But this time around, at least in my point of view, they did it right. They did it within the same show. Now granted, they taped shows and could splice all this together and everything, but they did it in the same show this time, so that actually makes it seem at least a little less I'm trying to find the proper word here. Overbearing in some way, overbearing in their suspense of who has what briefcase. And actually, I feel like they put the right people in the right positions there as well too. Though I will say how they went with the person they decided to fire in this case, kind of awkward, but they at least played off of everything that happened like within the match and everything in that sense. So obviously they were trying to write Velvet Sky off of the show for at least the time being. We'll see if that actually leads to anything, or if she's actually just leaving TNA altogether, and that was just their way of writing her off. I liked during that entire segment how, like, when Robbie E is kind of like freaking out and everything, you just have Austin Aries sitting right next to him, just like, it doesn't matter which briefcase I have. It really doesn't matter. He was just sitting there all nonchalant. It was actually quite entertaining, to watch, which is very rare. I don't really like the Feast or Fire concept. I do like how they pointed out that no one's actually cashed in the World Heavyweight title briefcase and actually won the match. They can play off of that and see when Austin Aries actually does take his world title match, and do they actually give him the world title in this case, and actually make that briefcase somebody who actually wins when turning in the briefcase. So we'll see where they go with those particular storylines. Obviously they were putting some tension between Bram and Magnus as well. Even though Magnus has the tag team title shot, now they can kind of team up, but they were showing some tension after the match. So we'll see if they keep them together, or they try to split them apart and have Magnus team up with someone else going in there. You had Koya, the new member of the Revolution, going up against Tigre Uno. A basic squash match leading into, basically a basic squash match, kind of showing what he can do. Some decent moves in there, obviously not much in the terms of what we've seen so far, so we'll give that some time. I still feel like he's out of place in this group, but at least it kind of fits, and kind of you can put anybody in this group just because of the fact that James Storm is kind of going in a brainwashing type almost cultist-esque group here, and it actually works in that way. It does in the end actually work that way, where you can kind of put anybody in there, even if it does feel weird. They can kind of just go with the whole brainwash type gimmick in that sense. Obviously leading into a promo, actually a very good promo by James Storm afterwards about Matt Hardy, leading into their match for later that night, which basically, with James Storm and Matt Hardy, was actually a relatively good match. Again here, obviously James Storm has always been really good, but you can kind of get it iffy with match quality with Matt Hardy. But this one was actually really a really good one in my mind. I like the ending where it basically set up for Jeff Hardy and Abyss going into Monsters Ball next week. Obviously, they've done this match plenty of times in the past. They'll do it again. For a weapons match, as long as they keep it to be the only weapons match on the show, I think it will actually be relatively good if they don't overload like a show with a bunch of hardcore matches next week. So we'll see where they go with that. Obviously, this is going to lead into the Hardys versus Storm and Abyss for the tag titles at some point in time. So we'll see how that storyline continues on as well. You had Havoc and Gail Kim. Honestly, I actually did like this match. It played off exactly what they needed to do to keep up with the Havoc and Awesome Kong area. Obviously, the match itself was relatively good because because Havoc and Gail Kim have had some really good and entertaining matches, but they kind of were playing the match off as Havoc trying to send a message to Awesome Kong because everybody had known what Gail Kim and Awesome Kong's matches have been in the past, so they're kind of playing off of that storyline. I liked how this is one of those few times that I don't mind the DQ finish because that's where because it was setting up more of the story between two other people in this case, and it worked out really well. I liked the whole confrontation afterwards with Awesome Kong and Havoc. It was done really well this time, and to be honest, it like I said before with this particular match, you don't often see two women of that stature and some go up against each other. It's usually someone like Havoc or Awesome Kong versus a much smaller, a woman that's much shorter, weighs a lot less and everything in that aspect. So it's unique. It's relatively decent storytelling that they're going with right now, and it should be a fun match when we actually get to see it. Now this leads into the whole Bobby Lashley, and this also ties in, of course, Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle as well. But Bobby Lashley with the Beatdown Clan, the BDC. I'm gonna just try to call it the BDC from now on because honestly, Beatdown Clan just sounds so stupid to me, and that's just my own personal take on that name. But the BDC obviously coming out there trying to antagonize Lashley about not joining the group and everything from the week before, leading into the initial beatdown, which obviously Lashley came out to try to get his title back because MVP walked away with the title. That led to another beatdown of Bobby Lashley, and then MVP said he will meet Lashley in the streets for later on in the show if he wants his title back. And like I said before, this does lead into also stuff that they have with Kurt Angle, Bobby Roode, because they went up against Low Ki and Eric Young, and obviously you had a decent promo backstage with Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle about how Bobby Roode won't be focused on this match. All he wants is Eric Young and everything on that aspect, trying to continue with them going on with that storyline. I really liked that promo. The match with Low Ki and Eric Young and Kurt Angle, Bobby Roode was actually really good as well. And of course, at this point in time, you're trying to fully establish the BDC as the big threat. So obviously they've been going over for most of the points, and they went over again here, not in the terms of winning the match, but in the terms of actually not looking weak in any way, shape, or form. Again, a relatively good segment there, which did lead into the end of the show with Bobby Lashley meeting MVP in the back. Obviously, it was just a complete setup for the BDC to actually attack Lashley one more time. Then they get chased off by Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle, and they don't really necessarily look weak because they're outmanning them, because they got chased away with two people that were carrying metal poles, and they took the not the guardrails, but how you have, like, if you were at a club and you had like that rope set up, and the rope set up to get in there the way the line was going to be working. They had two of those, so it doesn't necessarily make them look weak by getting chased off by two people wielding those. What I really liked on that aspect was when Bobby Roode picked up the heavyweight title. He, obviously they're teasing another match with Bobby Lashley and Bobby Roode in that case. They just have him staring, having Bobby Roode stare at the title, and then staring at Lashley. And that's how they went off the air. I actually really liked that ending to the show. I thought it was a really good way of doing it. It's a good way of teasing that, hey, maybe their storyline's not necessarily over with, even though they have this deal with the BDC, or are they going to, put their differences aside to team up against them. I like where they can go with that storyline here in the near future. Also, you had EC3 on the show going up against Jeremy Borash. Pretty much just what you would figure the match was going to be. It was just going to be kind of another little squash deal. I liked how they had Rockstar Spud and the new British Boot Camp 2 winner. They were teaming up and basically taking out Tyrus in this case. Obviously, they are kind of working as much as they can around EC3. As most people probably have seen that by now, he's still, favoring that his it was either rotator cuff or some kind of elbow injury he had, while they were taking their break from TV time. So they're kind of still nursing on that, and they're not really doing too much with EC3 in the terms of a physical aspect. But, I like this whole aspect that, like I said before, getting the two British boot camp winners and having them team up and going after them might be a nice little way of going with the storyline and continuing it on here in the near future. So we'll see where they go with all this. I felt this week's show was actually fairly entertaining. Feast or Fired wasn't as bad as it usually was. The match itself was kind of just a cluster mess of everything, but the entire segments in general weren't, they used to be really, like, in my view, or like the ones I'd seen in the past have been really bad. This one was actually fairly entertaining. Decent storyline build-ups with Eric Young, Bobby Roode, of course Kurt Angle with the BDC, Bobby Lashley with the BDC, all those aspects in there. And we'll see where they continue on with all these different storylines here in the near future. So I would say this week's TNA Impact was actually really good. So that's my review this week for TNA Impact Wrestling, and I thank you guys for watching.